Well, Mr. Chairman, could he keep the sign up for 1 minute? Can you put the, I so appreciate many aspects of your remarks, not all of them, but I think the staff got it right with just that one little mathematical sign there of NAFTA is greater than USMCA. And I think that we have to remember, as Secretary Vilsack said, the great economic impact that NAFTA did have in some aspects of our economy. I'm not saying in every aspect, but certainly in the state of Washington, we export $2 billion worth of goods to Mexico. It probably accounts for 107,000 jobs in the state of Washington. And I certainly agree with my colleague that when we're talking about these things, we should be talking about expanding the economic opportunity. I agree, it's a modernization in some areas that weren't previously included, but I want to also say I so support the chairman's great activities in getting the administration to relent on 232 tariffs as it relates to Mexico and Canada. I have a feeling we wouldn't even be having this hearing today if that first hadn't been accomplished. So greatly appreciate that by the chairman, and I greatly appreciate by the ranking member his focus with Senator Brown on these enforcement mechanisms. This too is a critical aspect. I authored some capacity building as part of the customs bill to try to get USTR to have the capacity to follow up on disputes and enforce trade agreements. I just believe there's a big market outside the United States, but we have to have the tools and the teams to make sure that these agreements are lived up to. And so I wanted to ask you, Mr. Wessel, earlier this year, Mexico entered into new labor laws ensuring Mexican workers the right to organize and bargain collectively. And now they have to create their independent labor courts, and as you were mentioning, Colombia and the challenges that we faced in getting the right infrastructure there to make these decisions. So now they have to implement these reforms. So what do we need to do to build capacity in this area? And don't we need to put in place enforcement tools to build capacity to protect and enforce labor rights?
Thank you for your question, and also the market opportunities you're talking about are enhanced by having workers be able to enjoy their rights so that they are good consumers of our products. So having labor rights in Mexico will enhance opportunities for our exporters of all products. What you're talking about is a critical issue, and thank you for your leadership several years ago on the trust fund, because it helped to establish the funding mechanisms we need for this. Mexico has a number of things it needs to do on its own, and they have set out a work plan to do some of that. In our opinion, it is far too lengthy. It's a 4-year process. It is uncertain, not only because of the constitutional challenges that have been lodged, more than 400 of them so far, but Mexico has failed to either define their budget or appropriate the money. That will come later this year. So helping on capacity building, the U.S. helping on capacity building in Mexico is vital to help those workers who have not had rights or understood their rights for so long to have, much as we do with trade facilitation and capacity building, the support they need. It means having people at our embassy who are able to go out to the field and help support them and understand what their rights are. It means having capacity here to support the unions and the free labor movements that we need, as well as to have access to the process to make sure that we don't have to go to enforcement where injury has occurred, but we can build the capacity to be able to make sure the agreement is a success.
So you mentioned it, you said U.S. support for that. So you believe that similar to using the customs bill and using those dollars to hire more lawyers at USTR, we should also hire more capacity for implementing these, helping to implement or oversee the enforcement of labor agreements?
As we have in other trade areas, trade facilitation, et cetera, customs, et cetera, there is a role for U.S. resources. Certainly, we're not going to pay for Mexico to hire its labor inspectors. That's a governmental duty for them. But there is so much more infrastructure that can be put in place in Mexico to make sure that the workers understand, have the access, and know how to interact with their, hopefully, free trade unions and their government. Yes.
Well, Mr. Chairman, it may be a Northwest perspective, but we definitely see an economy outside the United States. And to me, the key is getting these issues right and making sure that we can, enforce our agreements. So thank you for those ideas today. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator